I would ask those that are able to stand with me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Morning.
And good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, April 25th. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. If you were coming to the county board meeting this morning, you came to the right place. This is the county board meeting. And our next item of business is going to be to look for any additions or deletions to the agenda. And we have none.
Make a
Look for
motion to
a motion.
approve.
Got a motion? Is there a second? Got a motion and a second. Those in favor? Those opposed? That motion passes. Our next item of business is to approve our consent agenda. I will look to the county board and I will ask if there is anything that needs to be removed for further discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion on the table. Second. And there's a second. Gentlemen, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Casper.
Aye.
Blaine.
Aye.
Lemire.
Aye.
Wincher. Aye. And myself, Commissioner Jelinski, is an aye vote. That motion passes. Our next item of business this morning is, this is the month of the military child, and we have a proclamation this morning. Please come forward. And ma'am, you take a chair, you pull a microphone down in front of you because we are probably worldwide. If you would introduce yourself, who you are, what you are, and what we're talking about.
Hi, my name is Christina Vonberg. I am the Morrison County Veteran Service Officer. And today what we have is a proclamation. I would like to praise the children that are in all of the states, but right now we're focused on Morrison County. We have more children than anyone ever thinks about that have a military mom or dad or both. This community is very strong with the military background, to include the post commander I see sitting behind me, who has a military child as well. So you don't even know who is in the military when we're in our day-to-day business. And this is our way to say thank you. So if I don't have any questions, may I read the proclamation?
Yes, ma'am, you can.
The proclamation reads, whereas since 1986, the Department of Defense has recognized military children during the month of April because of their service, commitment, and sacrifice to supporting the Army's mission. It is important to honor, celebrate our youngest heroes. And whereas the military child is an opportunity to remember children's roles in strengthening the military family. This year's theme of taking care of our military children, and whereas the same recognize that strong and resilient Army children are essential to the success of the Army's mission, and whereas living in different states, countries, and continents, military children face unique challenges that most youth their age do not experience. They are equipped to adapt to present and future changes, such as permanent changes of station, deployments, reintegration, care of their wounded warrior parent, or coping with the loss of a fallen parent. Through each new step of life, they always remain ready and resilient. And whereas we, the leaders of Morrison County, are thankful for the positivity and enthusiasm of the military children as we keep moving forward. We are committed to maintaining excellence in schools, youth services, and childcare to ensure that families always receive the best programming, no matter where their next adventure takes them. Now, therefore, Morrison County does hereby proclaim April 2023 as Month of the Military Child, and encourage Morrison County to observe the month with appropriate ceremonies and activities that honor, support, and thank our military children. And then we have in witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand that caused the seal of the County of Morrison on the 25th day of April, 2023.
So moved. You
Second.
got a motion and a second. Gentlemen, I would look for further discussion. Yes, Commissioner.
I'd like to say thank you, Chris, for bringing this forward. There's a lot of sacrifices, not only the soldiers make, but the children and the wives and the husbands back home. And we appreciate you bringing this forward because, as we know, Camp Ripley is in the heart of Minnesota. We appreciate it very much.
And Christina, if I may, I'm going to be very bold about this. You happen to have several children that fall into this category. And I'm also going to look to our administrator this morning. I saw his daughter. I did not say hi to her this morning. I'm waving at her. And I saw her here this morning. She may be here for something else, but this might be what she's here for. And I want to acknowledge that. I truly do. And there may be other kids here that are children of military people here. And I don't know if there are or not, but I know that we have quite a few people here today. So how about a raise of our hands if we're children of military folks? Oh my goodness. Wow. Thank you very much. Chris, thank you.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just gonna say, tell you children out there, that is sweet. You all make a sacrifice. Not only do your dad and mom, but you do as well, leaving friends and family to a new station. It's got to be incredibly hard, and thank you for being there with your dad and mom, because you are an important support as well. Thank you so much. God bless you.
All right, gentlemen, we've got a motion and second discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Christina, thank you again very, very much. I appreciate it.
All right, let's bring them up, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
absolutely. Take a photograph.
All right, children or children and military parents?
You know what? Why not bring them all?
God bless
Let's
you.
do it. Let's get it all of them. All of them, including if there happens to be a spouse, please.
Maybe just keep the board seated.
Oh, there we go. Keep the board seated. Bring the board tight. Somebody can use your camera.
Hey, good to see you again. We're helpful. I know Chris from the field social media.
And congratulations on your.
All right. Shorter edition. Come on, boys, come forward. Yeah, that's good too.
Come on, there's a few shorty, Rich. Come on. It's okay. There we go. Absolutely.
Commissioner Lemire. Give the boys some time.
Yep.
You getting in there?
See, really like.
Squeeze them in. A couple of rows if we have to.
2 rows.
You're gonna warn us, right?
Tabitha,
Go ahead, Captain. Where do we need to go?
When you get squishy on
Fit? Excellent.
Smile.
Let's see where we are. Another smile.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Tabby, you need names? You so much.
I do actually. Thank you so much.
Talk to Chris.
Yes. I got them all record.
And Chris?
I'll send it back.
Chris, I'll need that plaque back from you.
Oh, black. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, it's fun.
Back to school. Thank you. I just need to address the board one more time. I did not expect this. This is very, very cool. Outstanding. Absolutely. Very cool. All right, next item of business this morning is number 6 on our agenda, distraction-free driving proclamation. And as always, please take a chair, introduce yourself, where you're from, and what you're here for.
Morning, board. I'm here with a couple proclamations this morning. The first one is our last one for the month of April, which is Distracted-Free Driving Month. And I believe we have, Tabitha's got a clip ready from Emily, who is our staff that works on this grant, but she is at a conference in Atlanta, so she is going to be here virtually.
And I'm the Safe Roads Grant Coordinator. Today, I will be presenting a distraction-free driving proclamation for the month of April. Distraction-free driving month, a proclamation by the Morrison County Safe Roads Coalition in partnership with the Morrison County Sheriff's Department. Whereas the safety and security of citizens of Morrison County and surrounding areas and a large percentage of our citizens regularly drive or ride in vehicles on our roadways. And distracted driving occurs when drivers divert their attention away from the task of driving to focus on another activity instead. And distracted driving can result in injuries and deaths to motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And the health and well-being of our citizens are a direct result of increased awareness about the dangers of distracted driving. And Minnesota's hands-free law made it illegal for drivers to read, send texts and emails, access the web, and talk on the phone without using a hands-free device as of August 1st, 2019. And according to the Office of Traffic Safety, each year in Minnesota, distracted or inattentive driving is a factor in 1 in 9 crashes, resulting on an average of 31 deaths and 109 injuries. And Morrison County Safe Roads Coalition supports efforts that help raise awareness of the dangers of distracted driving to both reduce the number of distracted driving crashes and to better educate drivers. And Morrison County law enforcement will be participating in increased enforcement all month to reduce the risk of injury and death caused in traffic crashes related to distracted or inattentive driving. And distracted driving is a serious, life-threatening practice that is preventable. And to reduce the number of crashes as well as improve driver safety, Morrison County motorists should dedicate themselves to adopting and maintaining safe behavior while behind the wheel by avoiding distractions such as phone calls, texting, eating, drinking, adjusting vehicle and music controls, talking to passengers, and reaching for items. And now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of Morrison County Commissioners of the great state of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim this month of April 2023 Distraction-Free Driving Month in Morrison County. And we call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens.
Chair,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion, is there a second? Second. Got a motion and a second, further discussion? Mr. Chair. Commissioner Wetcher.
Again, this is something, that's, I appreciate everybody bringing this to all drivers' attention. This is something, I was on the road yesterday, and again, am I guilty of it? Maybe once in a while, but there's other people too that you see them in there, you can see them going over the road, and it's kind of like the drinking laws, don't drive and drink. Don't, do things, driving again. The message is such a great and powerful thing that it's hitting home, because even, myself, I think, oh, no, I'm not gonna do it, I'll pull over, just because you hear about the accidents and all that, so great job on making sure that people are still aware of this.
Anything further from the board? I will note that 2019, that's how old this is already. It's been in effect for a very long time, and I wouldn't have thought it was 2019. My sense of time obviously went away. But distracted free, we heard it. Commissioner Wincher alluded to it. It's the same thing, whether you're adjusting your radio station, whether you're having a hamburger. For folks, I speak to different schools from time to time. Pretty much the same as being under the influence if you're on one of these, and there's a law that says you can't do it. Further discussion? Hearing none, gentlemen, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very kindly.
Very good. Additional proclamation,
One more.
and this one is actually going to be our first for the month of May.
Okay.
So I'll let Liz introduce herself.
Please.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Liu, and I am the lead assessor for Adult Protection Unit here at Morrison County. And I'm here to present the Vulnerable Adult Abuse Awareness and Prevention Proclamation. So, whereas people who are elderly or have disabilities have contributed to the general welfare of Morrison County by helping preserve customs, convictions, traditions, and many people from diverse backgrounds. And whereas these residents are vital and integral members of our society, wisdom, and experience have enriched our lives. And whereas abuse of the elderly and people with disabilities in domestic and institutional settings is a widespread problem affecting hundreds of thousands of people across the country. Whereas suspected abuse was reported 260 times in Morrison County and on to Morrison County citizens who are elderly or have disabilities in 2022. Whereas abuse is grossly underreported because the vulnerable adult population who are being abused find it very difficult to tell anyone and are usually ashamed and sometimes afraid. And whereas abuse happens to men and women of all income levels, all cultural and ethnic groups, whether they are good health, incapacitated in some way, or in neighborhoods and in rural areas. And whereas many of these cases investigated by Adult Protection Services in Morrison County involve self-neglect and financial exploitation, it is our duty as citizens to reach out to people in need. Now, therefore, we, the Commissioners of Morrison County, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 to be the Vulnerable Adult Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month in Morrison County, and urge all citizens to work together to help reduce abuse and neglect of adults who are elderly or have disabilities.
Gentlemen, I look for a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Please,
I would
Mr.
just like
Leonard.
to say, thank you for everything you do. It's a tough job, a kind of noble job, but we appreciate it very much. It's hard to believe that people be abusive towards elderly people, but as we can see, we had 260 cases here in Morrison County. And thanks again.
There's not one of us on this board that doesn't support our vulnerable people. There's not a question, but it doesn't matter if you're 2 years old, 22, or 102. Anybody can be vulnerable and we can classify it, and I get that. I get the whole thing. And it's a shame that the world that we live in today, and there's all kinds of problems in this country, but in the world that we live in today, that we find those that have to prey on the vulnerable, and that's very sad. So it's you folks, and it is first line of defense, call it whatever we wish, but you're there. And I can only say I appreciate that more than anything. Anything further from the board? All right, we got a motion, a second, further discussion, we have got no more, those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very, very kindly. Thank you both. And we do have a photograph, we should be able to lump.
Let's get Katie first,
Well,
and then we'll bring Elizabeth up with Katie.
We're gonna leave Katie stand right behind us, huh?
I would have the all.
Yeah.
Oh, we should stand? You're good. So you're in charge.
Well,
That's what we got.
we'll make it. Like
Oh, thank you.
And then, sit up here, Katie, and
How
look,
come Matt doesn't have to be in the picture?
I'm behind the scenes.
Okay.
Oh, like,
Those days gonna come sooner than later.
That looks way better for you.
You see, same one.
Oh.
They can read that. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, probably.
Perfect, they've taken photos before that.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Word and Shield. Yeah, God bless your efforts.
Our next one is gonna be National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Steph and her team is gonna come up here now. Ladies, if you take a chair, pull the microphone down in front of you, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from and what you're here for.
I'm Taylor Hernandez. I am in the Victims Advocate Hands of Hope. I'm Lindsay DeMatteo. I am the Sexual Assault and Volunteer Coordinator at Hands of Hope. Stephanie Ack, I'm the Executive Director for Hands of Hope.
Thank you. And today you're here to,
Lead the proclamation for National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
please carry on.
Whereas providing victims with knowledge of their rights and available services further strengthens their ability to recover by restoring a sense of self-empowerment. And whereas victims who feel understood and supported are more likely to disclose their victimization, seek services, and participate in the justice process. And whereas a multidisciplinary response involving collaboration among victim services professionals, criminal justice officials, legal professionals, medical and mental health providers, and community leaders is essential to reach and serve all victims, especially those who are marginalized, have disabilities, or live in remote locations. And whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 23rd through the 29th of 2023, provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that all victims of crime, especially those who are challenging to reach or serve, are afforded the rights and receive a trauma-informed response. And whereas Hands of Hope Resource Center is hereby dedicated to strengthening the victims of and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victims responders, and working for justice for all victims and survivors. Now therefore it be resolved that Morrison County and the Board of Commissioners proclaim the week of April 23rd to the 29th of 2023 to be National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
Look for a motion.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. Gentlemen, further discussion? Commissioner Blaine? Your turn.
My turn. Thank you.
Mike, please, Mike. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I think this is a great opportunity for not only these ladies, but for the board to lend recognition to this effort. And when we look at this issue of rights of individuals, this is an area I think that's extremely important in the fact that we do have rights for all in this country, and including for the rights of those who are, you know, crime victims. So I appreciate the opportunity that the board can take to help highlight this effort and certainly recognize the work of these ladies and their organizations who are on the forefront of that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blaine, thank you. I kind of took you a little bit off key there. I realize that, but you did a good job. Thank you. Thank you. Further discussion from the board. Further discussion from myself is going to be, just so happens today that we have in our presence a general. And Commissioner Blaine just said rights for everyone. Gotta tell you folks, it's rights for every single person. I'm vulnerable, and this is our vulnerable. Very often, this is our vulnerable. This is what we're talking about today. So whether it's our friends in the military, and we saw a lot of children here today, several spouses here today, several moms and dads here today. Law enforcement can't be with us today. That's just how it is. They've got some other things going on. We've heard from social services. We've heard from you folks at Hands of Hope. And I can't strengthen it enough to say thank you to everyone for everything that you do. Gentlemen, further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very, very much. Wonderful day. Stay safe, keep smiling. Photo, please. All right. No, that's, we have to. Front row. I was gonna put you in the middle, but so much for that. Right there's his speaker.
This house is.
Great. Got it.
Fantastic. Thank you guys. Very good. I appreciate the good work. You bring money up. Nice job. Up the good work. Thank you. Sir. All right, our next item of business is going to be number 9 on our agenda, Camp Ripley. General, good morning. I did not expect to see you back this soon, but I'm always honored to be in your presence.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and obviously, we value this partnership with the county board so much that, when in trouble, we look for help from other people.
Absolutely.
And so, and just because I never trust that I can technologically get what I need to you in your hands, have a paper copy.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. And please, sir, if you introduce yourself and what we're here for, and then just carry on.
Good morning. My name is Brigadier General Lowell Cruz. I'm joined here today by Captain Will Hermanson, who's my public affairs officer. And what I intend to do is I'm going to read you an opening statement. Then I'm going to go through the information we just provided you slide by slide.
Thank you.
And then I'll have a chance for some questions on the end and a closing statement, and we'll move on with our day. So good morning to the Morrison County Commissioners, Chairman, board members. I'm Brigadier General Lowell Cruz, the Senior Commander of the Minnesota National Guard's Camp Ripley Training Center. Thank you for your time today. The Minnesota National Guard has partnered with the National Guard Bureau as a part of a broader DoD effort to identify possible PFAS contamination due to the use of aqueous film foaming foam, which is, I'll refer throughout the rest of the brief as firefighting foam, because otherwise I'll stumble over those 4 words throughout. Prior to 2017, we used this foam for firefighting training and testing and maintenance. Since 2017, it has only been used for aviation fire emergencies with proper cleanup procedures following the incident. Why this is important to you as your community neighbor, we would like to collect samples and test our neighbors' drinking water. We're doing this out of an abundance of caution as we want to ensure our neighbors' water is safe to drink. We want to present our process for site testing and notification to you today to help us ensure that our neighbors know our processes and that we care about their well-being. So if you would move to slide 2 in the presentation, please. These are the folks that are my technical help throughout all this process. Once again, I introduce myself. Major Nick Slade is my lawyer, my judge advocate. Will's here is my public affairs officer, and then I have a great environmental team, which I've spent a lot of time over the years talking about how award-winning they are. And that's part of this. Some of our partners is the Minnesota Department of Health, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and the United States Army Corps of Engineers. And we'll talk about how they're helping us throughout. The 3rd slide is my agenda today. I'm going to give you a little background, followed by the current status of what we know for facts, and then what we plan to do going forward. So what is PFAS? As we all are quickly learning, we have chemicals in our environment are constantly a concern, and PFAS is one of the newest ones. It's been used for a lot of years as an industrial compound. There's more than 5,000 man-made chemicals that fall under this category. And PFAS and PFOA are common PFAS chemicals, and they're found in things as common as carpets that have Scotchgard protectant on it, clothing that's water resistant, styrofoam in your prepackaged food, and today's topic, aqueous film forming foam, or what I'm going to refer to as firefighting foam throughout this. In the 1970s, the Department of Defense used this firefighting foam, which contains PFAS. The DoD uses this firefighting foam in our firefighting vehicles, certain fire suppression systems, and in a controlled manner when we're doing firefighting training. Next slide, please. So as part of a DoD effort, the National Guard girls been trying to complete a nationwide effort to inventory and assess where PFAS has been used on our installations, and specifically where we potentially used it as firefighting foam or stored it. And so the National Guard uses the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act as our guide for this effort of assessing and evaluating our PFAS exposures. This is a federal law, and it gives us a process for investigation and then a cleanup process if necessary for contaminated sites. So as part of that process, we conducted a preliminary assessment, which was really the first phase of this effort in 2019. And it really centered around just an inventory of what locations we may have stored or used firefighting foam. We talked historically to a lot of our retirees that have been present over the years and things like that to try to identify areas that we were concerned about. That led to phase two, which was a site investigation, which we completed last summer. That site investigation consisted of working with local, state, and federal stakeholders to determine if we had PFAS present in our environment. And that report was finally published here later in 2020, this year in 2023, and that's why I'm here today, because of that. Next slide, please. So as part of that preliminary site assessment, which included soil boring and sampling of soil samples as well as groundwater samples, we went and looked at all the areas where our Camp Ripley soldiers and employees live, work, and eat on the installation. And we identified 8 areas that we were concerned about could have had a PFAS release for use. So we completed those soil borings and water sampling. And out of those 8 areas, we found 1 area that has soil contamination and 7 areas that have water levels above the regional screening level. Okay. And I asked my scientists, what does the regional screening level mean? They told me that it's obvious, it's a baseline of considerations, I guess, that go into establishing what is a considered residential or commercial exposures levels. And they utilize probably the most vulnerable portion of our population, which are children, as to set that baseline. So the logic is if it's above the regional screening level, then there's some concern. Next slide. So the third phase of this operation of Camp Ripley will continue to occur, and that's really to come back and identify the extent of the contamination, either in where we found soil samples or where we found water samples. And that'll continue to occur over the next couple of years. Our concern is that, is we test Camp Ripley's water all the time. And our current water on our installation is safe for all our tenants that come there, my employees, the soldiers that come there to train, my family, and that as well. But out of an abundance of caution, we're concerned that we have neighbors outside the perimeter of Camp Ripley that might have a groundwater source that potentially could have a higher level above the regional screening level. And so we're going to approach our neighbors here over the next week and ask them to allow us to come and sample their water source to make sure that it's safe. So if we go to the next slide. This map depicts the Camp Ripley perimeter. You've been there before, you're very well aware of where the airfield is and the facilities that surround Camp Ripley. What you see in the yellow box is an area that includes 31 properties of neighbors at Camp Ripley. They're all within a quarter-mile of my perimeter that we are going to offer water sampling to ensure that their water sources are below the regional screening level. There are 31 parcels here. We don't exactly know how many water sources are there. We assume that there are water sources that are sand points and things like that that will be water sources we want to test, make sure that we can ensure our neighbors that they're safe. Okay. Next slide, please. So to do this water testing, we're gonna host a landowner meeting next Tuesday on the 2nd of May. And at that landowner meeting, we're gonna work with the landowners to ensure that they've had an opportunity before that to sign a letter that the legal folks from the Corps of Engineers are gonna give us, that gives us the authority to come on their land and test their water. We are going to try to collect all those letters from the landowners by the 5th of May, which is to allow us to complete the testing on the timeline that we are established. At that point, sometime we think around the 9th or 12th of May, contractors are going to visit the landowners and collect water samples from their water sources. We anticipate that taking 3 to 5 days. And then those tests are going to be sent off to a national level lab where we anticipate we could take up to 12 weeks for those samples to be confirmed one way or the other. When we receive the notification of the results of the sampling, it'll result in one of two actions. If the samples are below the regional screening level, the landowners will receive a certified letter indicating that. And we will continue to monitor, I guess, where we're at with that whole process. If the levels are above the regional screening level, then we're going to individually meet with each landowner and talk about a way ahead. And the initial way ahead at that point would probably include offering them some kind of alternative water source, initially bottled water, and then working with them to either establish a system in their residents where we can treat the water, remove PFAS and get it down to a below the regional screening level, or to help them mitigate it in some other manner. So this is kind of our timeline going forward here, and you know, the Army's big on establishing goals and timelines, and so that's what this is. We're meeting with you right now simultaneously. My boss, Major General Mankey's already talked to the governor about this. They're aware about it. We're, you know, using our relationships throughout the National Guard to talk to state and local officials that we know and work with in this process. Starting tomorrow, my team from Camp Ripley is going to go door to door to those 31 landowners and invite them to a meeting on the 2nd of May. In that invite will be a lot of information that we'll provide them as well. And for those that we can't find at home over the next 3 days, we'll obviously continue to call with the goal is getting as many landowners as we can to the 2nd of May. And if we miss some landowners, we'll have the ability to catch up on the backside. But obviously, we're trying to get as many signed up for the testing as we can during the period that the contractors will be on the ground. So that testing will occur in May. We've got some tentative dates right now, like I explained. And then we'll get the notification at least within 12 weeks, which takes us out of the August, September timeframe to start trying to figure out how we're going to help those that might have a level above the regional screening level. And with that, gentlemen, I'll take your questions.
Look to the board. Commissioner Blaine, this time I'm not putting you on the spot.
No, you're not, Mr. Chair. Not putting me on the spot, but I'm gonna ask the general a couple questions, if I may. So in the earlier slide, you'd mentioned there's this PFAS chemical is found in, you know, or as part of 5,000 man-made chemicals, and it's in carpet, it's in clothing, it's in a lot of everything. And we're raising this awareness that, or the powers, the environmental powers to be are raising the awareness of PFAS in the environment, in wherever. we didn't talk at all about what is the risk to people, to humans, I don't care where it's, so we're concerned about a chemical level that could be measured in water or in soil or whatever. But we haven't identified if there's a risk to the human body if this chemical is present anywhere. Was that revealed to you at all by the Department of Health or the EPA or Well Control?
Commissioner, what I would offer is, and I'm obviously not an expert, but there are experts in the Minnesota Department of Health to put a lot of information together on their website regarding PFAS exposure and the concerns associated with that. So we're going to use that as a guide as we help inform our neighbors and ourselves on the risks associated with it. We continually test fine water at Camp Ripley, and that comes from a deep water source. So it's well above well below the levels of concern of any kind of chemicals or unsafe to drink. So from the science of the water at Camp Ripley is safe? Yes, it is. But we are concerned about the fact that the Department of Health sees PFAS as a concern, and so we are concerned that I have neighbors that might have a shallow well or water source from a standpoint or something like that, and obviously we've identified that it's present in the water table with the sampling that we did do.
So the concern that the initial concern I have is how do we answer to the public that's outside of your base? And I recognize and I applaud your concern for your neighbors there within that quarter mile. But when the question then comes to us is, so if the level is somewhere measured above the gradient line that the Department of Health puts out, what risk is that to those individuals, and how is that answered?
And I don't have a good answer for that, but I do know that this science is on the Minnesota Department of Health website. And I'll have experts like that from that department with us on the second. So I'm going to turn to them and help them ask them that same question you're writing it out, and they'll come prepared to answer that.
Excuse me, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, my concern that this isn't, and for the board, this isn't the first time we've had a good discussion about PFAS and where it's at. And I think it goes back to the fact that now we've got it everywhere. So then how do you legitimately look at addressing an issue that where you could claim it's as common as the air we breathe or as common as the ground we walk on, kind of situation. But I don't want to be an alarmist to our residents out there, but I also, on the flip side of that, we want to be responsible, and this board and as commissioners, we're responsible for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Morrison County. So I applaud, your participation in our work in that area too, but I also am willing to tread carefully as we go forward on this.
Yeah, the Department of Defense, the Minnesota National Guard is obviously hypersensitive on the subject. This isn't the first installation that the Department of Defense has had. There will be had higher. And so there's a response process that is set in law that, you know, that we're gonna follow, which allows us then to be responsible. If we can, you know, the whole process is set up to document if we're responsible for the presence of that, you know, as we talked about, and that if PFAS is, you can even find small levels of it running around your blood. So,
Exactly.
you know, the scientists, you know, are telling us there's a concern that exposure might lead to other, you know, diseases, things like that. So I think it's prudent that we address it, and the industry is addressing it. You know, 3M and other industries use a lot of it in their processes, and they have a plan to start to remove a lot of it in a lot of their products as well. So I think it's prudent that we figure out if the water around my neighbors are safe to drink.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome, Commissioner Lemire.
I just want to say thank you for being proactive with this, doing the testing on the installation and then getting to the neighbors as quickly as we possibly can. That's noble. And if there's anything that we or I can do to help this situation out, please don't hesitate to ask. We have some gentleman, ones in the audience here that he knows what he has to worry about PFAS with our landfill. So if there's anything that we can help you out with, please look forward to it.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner, and obviously this area that we're testing is yours.
Yeah.
So we're gonna include you in the landowner meeting and truly, you know, when in times of need, you turn to friends and partners. And we see the county commissioners as partners with Camp Ripley. And so obviously I'm here because this is the first step in a communication effort to try to explain what we're doing, and more importantly, to address what Commissioner Blaine said, which is to avoid a panic over this. Because we just want to make sure that, you know, our neighbors have a safe water source.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Thank you. General, question I have is we established that perimeter of 31 houses and all that. What if I'm beyond that? How are you gonna address those people? Because I'm sure if you're gonna be going knocking around the doors to, you know, tell them to come to these meetings, if I'm a half a mile away, where is it gonna begin? Or I know where it's beginning, where is it gonna end as far as the testing?
So we have to start somewhere. So we're using science to figure that out. So the first thing, when you look at that map, the water flows naturally through the water table towards the Mississippi River. And so the locations that we were concerned about are within a quarter mile of the residences that are in that yellow box. Okay. There are some residents north of that area that obviously, if we find residents that are above this regional screening level that are neighbors to those folks, then I think it is prudent that we come back and test their neighbors and stuff like that. So, you know, at some point though, we got to draw a box where we start. So we took the quarter mile supports the science, and we're using the science of how water flows underneath the soil as part of it.
Thank you. And I appreciate that, General. I appreciate it a lot. I have a question. I've got friends, obviously, that are in the fire business. One of them happens to sit right in the middle here, Commissioner Lemire. My question is very boldly, you probably don't have the answer to this, and that's fine. Has the firefighting foam industry already started, or maybe they're there already and in the process of removing PFAS, if you will, from that chemical agent that's used routinely, if you will?
That's a great question, Chairman. And I haven't asked that, so I don't know.
If I may, I do have, the DOD is looking into that process of how to replace that firefighting foam with a safer alternative. And there are several options on the table, but to be continued.
You know, it's obviously used in it for us in aircraft fire and rescue.
Absolutely.
You know, because it helps put out petroleum fires, things like that. That's the value of it. And so, you know, they obviously have a need for it. That's why in the opening statement, we talked about the fact that we'll continue to have it present on Camp Ripley because we have aircraft that are landing there all the time. And people like Commissioner Lanier are involved in making sure that they're land safely.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Anything further from the board? General, I will look to you. Anything further?
Well, I have a closing statement here that I'll read for you.
Please.
So the Minnesota National Guard service members live here, work here, and serve here. Camp Ripley is part of this community for more than 90 years. And as the Morrison County's largest employer, we care about our neighbors and we're dedicated to the clubbing. So thank you for allowing me to talk to you. Obviously, we'll talk about PFAS more in the future. But I truly thank this board for allowing me to elicit your help and enlist you in part of the communication effort here. Thank you.
And General, as long as you're still here and still seated, I'm looking out into the audience and looking at Tony and looking at Jeff. I'm just asking the question. Gentlemen, do you have anything that you want to add?
Out there. Obviously, we deal with it. Very thorough in our process as we go up to it. But regardless, we use estimates.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Tony. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, General. I appreciate it. You gentlemen have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Keep smiling. All right. Next item of business is going to be Health and Human Services, see report. Take care. And as always, after you take a chair, if you would pull the microphone down in front of you, if you would introduce yourselves and let us know what you're here for, go from there.
Health and Human Services. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Melanie Erickson, Social Services Supervisor for Child and Family Services.
Melanie, good morning.
Good, so we're here again, seeking the board's approval for the Sourcewell funding that would allow the development of the Children's Mental Health Initiative for the Region 5 group. So Melanie did a great job putting some talking points together, so I'll let her take it from here.
All right, thank you. The Sourcewell grant that is available at this time is the Impact Grant, and we have applied for this in the past, as well as other agencies and other county departments can as well. However, this year they are focusing specifically on mental health when it comes to this Impact Grant funding. And as a region, we have prioritized children's mental health as an area that we need to address. We have already been working together as regional partners with the Collaborative Intensive Bridging Services Program in order to get that, continuing to get that off the ground, and where we had access to Sourcewell grant for that as well. As we work together as regional supervisors, we've realized that there are several initiatives that we could bring forward if we work together. There's quite a few gaps in children's mental health services. And that would be the goal of the initiative, would be to work together as supervisors in order to identify those gaps, develop services, and the funding from Sourcewell would be used as seed money for those new services. At this time, it's important, I think, to understand that the Adult Mental Health Initiative has been operating for some time in similar capacity. However, it has a substantial amount of state funding that it is awarded in order to bring forward projects. And they've developed a lot of unique services for our county residents, our regional county residents as a part of that funding. Of course, children's mental health does not have that same funding from the state. I do want to emphasize that most of the services and the initiatives that are brought forward for children are developed by counties. And there are different county regions throughout the state of Minnesota that have been working on developing various programs to address the needs and the gaps. Children's mental health is basically funded by medical assistance and PMAP and insurance. that covers individual therapy, outpatient therapy, and case management. And also the very deep end services of partial hospitalization and hospitalization, but that leaves a substantial gap in the middle for families that are struggling with more significant mental health needs with their children. And recently, you know, there has been an increase in anxiety and more hospitalizations of children that have, as a result of that anxiety and depression that has kind of increased in the last couple of years. The state has supported children's mental health in the way of school-based mental health grants, and we have that here locally provided by Northern Pines, and that has been a great asset. Again, that focuses mainly on early intervention, and that is an important thing. But again, we have families that we're working with, about 150 approximately, that are having more significant need than outpatient services can provide for. State does offer minimal grants of family support grant, which is about $3,000 per family. We've definitely increased our access to that. I've had previous reports here that show that we've increased it substantially up to $100,000 for our families here locally. And then respite grant is very minimal. The county supports that in our budget as provides at least twice as much as what the state grant provides. So there's just that substantial gap that we're trying to fill as a part of this Children's Mental Health Initiative. Most of the creative and services that families want to access that include families in the treatment plan, it has to happen in the home, within the home in the community. And so we need to recruit more professionals that are in-home therapists that are willing to go into the home and provide in-home skills as well. And that will be a major part of what this initiative will work on. We'll likely have to increase salaries in order to pay for that and increase reimbursement for driving time, because they are not reimbursed from insurance companies for time that they spend to go out to the homes. But that is what families want and need. They're busy, they're working, kids are in school, they're trying to manage a number of appointments. And so that will be a major thing that we will try to address. And then as a part of that, try to establish how we can continue to fund those services past the grant. Respite care is also a great need, and we'll be working on that as well. Families have crisis situations where they need respite, or also planned respite is also an important part of allowing kids to stay in their homes. Families need a break, kids need a break, and that will be another of the initiatives we'll be working on as a part of this Children's Mental Health Initiative. So I'm asking if the board would support this Region 5 Sourcewell grant to work on these projects for our kids in our county and the kids that reside in all of Region 5, actually, as we understand that families do move back and forth between county lines.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Got a motion on the table. Is there a second? Second. Got a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Again, I wanted to say thank you for always looking at ways to help others, especially children. I know they're a passion of yours, and we appreciate that. You helped with schools, and now you're coming up with this new initiative. And something that you said last at our planning commission a week ago, the state provides mental health initiatives for adults, but they fail for the child, and the child will become an adult someday.
Yeah.
So that made so much sense that it's hard to believe that they don't provide initiative help for the child.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, that has been one of the issues that I think has been hard to watch for me in this role for so many years, is the investment kind of a little bit late. And that if we really invest in our kids when they are at the ages where their brains are developing and they're learning their social skills and they're learning their coping skills, that we can help them be successful adults that are working, that have a good quality of life, and you know, that we can help them contribute back to the community in which they live, and that would be our major goal. And so, yeah, I share your concern with that investment is lacking for those kids in their development.
Because the cost to benefit ratio that they use all the time would be much better spent on the child. But, that's why we have youth to, maybe open their eyes. And I'd also just like to say thank you for Sourcewell for the opportunity to apply for this grant. I know they've helped us out with childcare providers in the past who, I hope are successful and working with the region too. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mel, let me ask you, if you don't mind, and I think he's talking about this planning, this grant is in the sum of approximately
$200,000.
and it's a regional grant, so we're teaming up, not just with Morrison County, but we're teaming up with.
Cass, Crow Wing, Todd, Wadena, and Morrison are the 5 regional counties that will work together.
And if we choose to do nothing, and these kids start falling through the cracks, it's fair to say that this is levy dollars that then come into play to fix a problem that may have been fixed earlier on, if you will.
Yes, that is accurate. I've seen that in my budget many times over and over again. If we can't address kids and help them stay in the home, an out-of-home placement is mainly county level levy dollars. Not only is it about the levy dollars, but it's the increased trauma to the kids. And just the data is not good as far as showing us that the out-of-home placements really have a lasting impact because of all the disruption that takes place. And the transfer of learning of those skills back into the family home just is not as great when you're in Duluth and then you come back home. Families don't get a chance to participate as much either. So yes, all of those factors are true.
Very good, thank you. Look to the board, Commissioner Blaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And was looking at this before and so the question comes to me now, and I'm looking for some guidance on so it's trying to go back and track some of the investment that's been made. So when we did the funding for the SIBS program, when this started the bridging session, was that levy dollars that were used? Was that money out of your budget that was used to initiate the SIBS program in the county? Or was that the money that, so we took $500,000 of ARPA money and we utilized that to address anxiety and children's mental health, as I remember. So was the ARPA money the money that was used to initiate the SIBS program, or was that money that came out of the budget?
It was kind of an event that had a series of steps. So the SIBS program, Collaborative Intensive Bridging Services, which is the intensive in-home program, we wrote a Sourcewell grant for that. We received funding to pay for the training and consultation needed for that, as well as unfunded costs of insurance, and that was across Region 5. We also had a coordinator in that position, and we had no longer have that coordinator as he became one of our supervisors. So we've been operating without a coordinator, which means that we have about $140,000 left of that grant for the region that has not been spent, that this Children's Mental Health Initiative would continue to manage and distribute. One of the reasons why we have carryover from that grant is that we were unable to get in-home family therapists for so long, and still some of the counties, Todd and Cass, do not have family therapists to bring forward the SIBS program. And then and part of what you recall, Commissioner, is that we used the ARPA funds in order to add to the salary so that we could recruit family home therapists for Morrison County. So we have been successful in recruiting a therapist. She's fully trained and she's actively working with our families. It's going very well. The other counties have not had that same advantage of using ARPA funds, so it's possible they may use some of this allocation to model that same program. We also use ARPA funds for the behavior specialists in each of the Morrison County schools. And that was to help kids socialize and have more support after anxiety. So we've been kind of using it in tandem, the ARPA funds as well as Sourcewell in order to support our kids this post-pandemic time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, anything further from the board? Commissioner Winchell.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, the ARPA funds, that is, it's the Crow Wing, or they use them for other amounts of
Yeah.
whatever, that's their choice. Our choice was to do this. So the question I'm pertaining, if we have 200,000, is it gonna be like, they're gonna be applying for X amount of dollars of this 200,000? So, hey, we didn't use our ARPA funds because we used it to buy widgets or whatever.
Mhm.
And then, are we gonna be penalized because we have maybe a little extra? Or are they gonna be able to say, let's.
You'll have to negotiate with me on that one.
Good answer.
Thanks all the time to that grant, so I've got some brownie points to spend. So, yeah, that would not be, I mean, because really it's not about, it's about everybody serving their kids and we all can choose that. And they probably purchase some other things that we don't have. And so maybe we want to do something similar to that. I think Crow Wing is looking at a model within home skills. So I will be looking at dividing those funds up equally.
That, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
Thank you. And just to what you just said, so we're talking about a $200,000 grant. We have 5 counties in Region 5, so if that grant's awarded, that was going to be my question. So then every county would get $40,000 of that grant. If we're saying that we would divide that equally among 5 counties, because to Commissioner Wincher's point, different counties have allocated different levels of funding from different sources within their county to address this need. Is it necessarily fair then for counties to be penalized because they've already utilized other resources or have greater access to resources than other counties? And so that was my question, regardless of which county writes the grant or which individual spends the time. If that grant is awarded, is it not right that all 5 counties should share equally? And how do we, and I'm not here to say that that's what's going to happen, but I think the question then becomes asked in that manner. How is that decision made?
I think that is why we've decided to go with the Children's Mental Health Initiative model, rather than just kind of applying for a grant and then kind of having more of a loose idea of how things would be spent or managed. Following the model of the Adult Mental Health Initiative is they have bylaws and they vote and the directors participate with that. And we would anticipate that the directors would participate with this as well, so that we can either assure that it's equal or it's managed by county population. Those are the 2 models that I know that exist out there. And I think we'll be relying on our directors as well for some input into that situation of how that's divided.
And so if I may, Mr. Chair, so then I make that assumption that in a situation like this where we have 5 counties applying to share in a grant to address a specific need out there, that we have collaboration by directors from each of the 5 counties or staff from each of the 5 counties to ensure some accountability to how counties are utilizing that money, and they're utilizing that money in the manner it wasn't intended to be. So that if it wasn't able to be utilized that way, that money could be moved to other counties who have a greater need.
Yes.
And that is why we have a Melanie on our side, on our team, on our team. Thank you, Commissioner Blaine. That was very good. Commissioner Casper, did you have something?
Yeah, just, Mr. Chair, just a simple question. How does our county line up with the other 4 as far as population numbers?
I believe we are second to Crow Wing County.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
And thank you for being there. Really, we really appreciate
thank you.
your wisdom.
All right, gentlemen, we've got a motion, I believe, by Commissioner Lemire and a second by Commissioner Winchester. Had discussion? Is there any further discussion? Going to be a roll call vote. I'm going to look to Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Lemire.
Aye.
Winchester. Aye. Myself, Commissioner Jelinski is an aye. Commissioner Casper.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. I want to just truly mean it. Thank you both for coming here today. And Melanie, I know this is extra stuff. Everybody's got extra stuff on their plate. I'm very clear on that. And so do you. But thank you for that extra effort. And I have to tell you that for you to, and I know you don't have it all written down in front of you, it comes out of you. This is your passion. And thank you for that. And I thank you, Katie. You have a wonderful team.
Commissioner, Mr. Chair, I apologize. There is something I forgot to mention.
Uh-oh.
I just wanted to let you know that the ANGS presentation about anxiety in childhood will be held here at the Government Center on May 18th in the evening. And so the community and commissioners are welcome to attend. It is it's a screening, it's a movie. I understand it's very well done. And there'll be a panel after that. And for folks that are trying to understand what our kids are going through, wanting to understand where this anxiety is about, it's a great opportunity to help understand that. So more information will be coming out on that.
Do you have the time on that yet? No?
I do not. I believe it will start around 5, but I don't have that yet. And I'll be making sure to get that out on the county website when we know.
More information to come. All right. Thank you again.
For letting
Very,
me
very kindly.
get in with that last piece. I appreciate it.
Outstanding.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Melanie. You too.
All right, our next item of business is going to be the administrator's report. I believe this is going to be to close a session.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have 2 items, one as an agenda item and then one on correspondence. So if I could address the correspondence first.
Please.
I would say 2 weeks ago, I received an email from AMC representative on a pass-on note from Commissioners Mary Jo McGuire and Commissioner Rick Svay, who are our Minnesota representatives to NACO. And the correspondence was asking for Morrison County to provide $1,000 over 2 years toward the National Center for Public Lands Western Interstate Region. The concept here is that that NACO represents, of course, the entire country, and there are counties across the country that receive, I was told, millions of dollars in this type of National Center for Public Lands, or LACTIF, which is Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Funds. Morrison County's portion of that is $100,000, paid $50,000 increments times 2. And so their ask of us is 1% of that to help fund this national effort to help represent counties in relation to local assistance and tribal consistency funds. I asked 2 questions, and I was waiting on a response from that before bringing it to the board. One is, where's the location of said office? And it would be typically Washington, D.C., whereas NACO headquarters is located. And then my second question, I can hear one of the commissioners asking me, what's the sustainment plan? The sustainment plan is that their initial ask of 1% would result in $15 million across the country if all counties participated. Morrison County, again, portion of that is $1,000. So it's an ask for a federal level representative in that regard of, again, the LACTIF, or Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Funds. And I just wanted to mention it now. I'm not asking for any action. I guess I would solicit any questions the board may have, and I would probably bring it back next week to planning with any other information asked for or any other information that I garner to then go forward here in 2 weeks to coming.
Commissioners, I'm all in support of bringing it back next week for further discussion. Anything current right now? Commissioner Wager?
Tribal consistency funds. Is there explanations for that or what? I don't quite understand. Asking for.
And Mr. Chair, what I received is these, a one pager here from the commissioners that represent us, and they reference, and I'm showing it to you now, the Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund, a flexible targeted federal investment in public lands and counties. What does that really mean? I'm not sure, but I can try to dig into what does this agency represent, and I believe they are the advocate then to receive the federal investments on the public lands. That's just a shot, but I can look further.
If you could do that, I appreciate it.
That's my thought of bringing back the planning. I took the plan a little bit more. Commissioner Blaine.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was going to just make the ask of the administrator if he would be willing to forward this this correspondence from our NACO representatives back to us, so we could also do some research on this. I'm going to be honest with you here. I'm hesitant on first blush on this because it's almost, to me, appears to be an ask to fund more bureaucracy in the process. And so I'd like to at least have the opportunity to do a little digging and say, are we just throwing money down the rat hole, or are we actually getting something out of this? And also, I guess the other part of this is, so what impact does this organization have within Morrison County, and or where is this $100,000 that's been coming to the county? I'll be blunt, say, I don't ever remember seeing this come through, and I don't ever remember this being discussed in the 5 years I've been on this board, that all of a sudden we're getting 2 checks for $50K and we don't, and it's never been brought to our attention. So, I'm keen on the idea of having a discussion about this at planning. I'm also keen on the idea of maybe taking some of my own time to dig and look into this and try and find a little more too. Not in the sense that I don't necessarily need to dump all the research onto our administrator, who I know also has plenty of things to do too. But I think before we respond to Ms. McGuire and Mr. Svay, it's up to us to do our homework ourselves, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have some kind of litigation, and you have to help me out on this, because I can't remember exactly. We have some property on the eastern end of Morrison County that Mille Lacs Lake Tribe, if you will, has interest in. At the very least, maybe that's as far as I can go with that. Does that have anything to do with this at the same time? And I hardly think it does. But to be honest with you, I don't know. So I like the idea of further discussion. I couldn't really care less if we discuss this for several different meetings. It doesn't make any difference, because I really don't know that we're going to have an answer after our planning meeting next week. I really truly don't know that, but I think that we owe it to ourselves to have that discussion and maybe further discussion. Maybe not. I don't know.
I'm okay with that, Mr. Chair.
part of part of the wording in this is public lands, within Morrison County. Well, too bad they left, but I mean, generals here, how much of Camp Ripley, of the 53,000 acres of Camp Ripley, would be considered or could be considered public lands? You also have a state park, you have, wildlife management areas, you have, crane meadows, those things. What role do they play in that description of public lands in this dialogue? And maybe that is a part of that reference, Mr. Chair. And that's kind of what for me, myself, I kind of like to find that out.
Very good. So I'll look to the administrator if that kind of muddied the waters enough to say, hey, we'll bring it back next week and talk about it some more.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chair, and the board's questions. And frankly, I haven't seen this type of a request that comes from NACO asking for this type of support. And so what I've received is exactly what I was hoping for today. So thank you. My second item is I would ask the board, following the discussion on committee meetings, reports and schedules, that the board go into a closed session. And I could read the resolution that supports that request.
Please.
Whereas Morrison County is seeking legal counsel regarding potential litigation between Morrison County and a former employee, and whereas the Morrison County Board of Commissioners desire to invoke the attorney-client privilege and discuss litigation confidentially with the county attorney and or outside legal counsel, and whereas pursuant to Minnesota State Statute, Section 13D.05, Subdivision 3B, the board by resolution may close a meeting as permitted by the attorney-client privileges. Now therefore be resolved, the Morrison County Board of Commissioners hereby closes the county board meeting on April 25th, 2023 in order to discuss the potential litigation. Again, I ask that to happen after the committee reports.
I would move that resolution, Mr. Chair, with that stipulation.
Got a motion, is there a second? Got a motion and a second, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Wincher? Aye. Myself, Commissioner Jelinski's an aye. Commissioner Casper? Aye. Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
That motion passes, thank you. We will now move into our schedules for the next couple of weeks, and that is going to take us from April 30th to May 13th. And gentlemen, if it's all the same to you, I'll get it started. Tabitha, I talked to you last time about some Thanksgiving planning that I was going to be involved in that got changed, and that got changed to 7:00 p.m. on Monday. I'll be at a private residence in Little Falls discussing that. Just whether we need to put that down or not, I don't know. On Tuesday, the 2nd of May, which was going to be our employee breakfast. That was the date that we initially thought of to do that. So we were going to change our planning meeting to 9:00 in the morning, but our planning meeting should stand at 8:30 in the morning on Tuesday, the 2nd.
No breakfast?
No, that's coming up later. That date just got changed. Planning should be at 8:30 now.
Okay.
We should also have a Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting at 6 p.m. in this room on Tuesday, the 2nd. On the 3rd, I have.
He just announced he's gonna, and he'd like some of the commissioners would go maybe. So that, what's that last?
Yeah, we don't have.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, while the general was speaking, I sent his public affairs officer a request of the date, time and location, date being the 2nd, so time and location for that meeting. I'm not sure if it'll conflict or not, but when I get that, I'll provide certainly to Commissioner Lemire and the rest of the board. And then I would, Mr. Chair, I'll be asking either member of Public Works or Health and Human Services if they can attend that, or myself.
That's very good, thank you. Then on the 3rd at 11:00 in the morning, I have the Central Minnesota Emergency Service Board Executive Committee meeting, and I actually think that might be in person. Not positive, but I think it's in person. If it's in person, it's at the City of St. Cloud. Thursday, the fourth, I have a state emergency communications board meeting. It's called the Legislative Committee, and that is virtual. On the fifth of May, Friday, the fifth at 8:30 in the morning, we have a T-SWAC meeting, and that's at the landfill. On the 9th of May, gentlemen, this is the employee breakfast date. That employee breakfast starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. So probably all want to be here well before 7 o'clock in the morning. It starts at 7 in this room. The county board meeting will start right after the employee breakfast, still scheduled to be at 9 o'clock in the morning. The 9th. On the 10th, at 4:30 in the afternoon, Morrison County, Todd County, Wadena County Community Health Board meets. And that group meets in Wadena, Minnesota at the Pizza Ranch at 4:30 in the afternoon. On the 11th of May at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Next Generation 911 meeting. That's virtual. On the 12th of May, 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board RAC meeting. I believe that is also virtual. And that's all I have on my calendar. So Commissioner Winter.
Yeah, you got me covered pretty much. If you may help me on the ninth, I have down as a community public safety.
I had you write that down a while back. That's supposed to be scratched off.
That's why. Okay, all right. Otherwise, you got me covered. Thank you.
Commissioner Lemire.
Recommendations, Mr. Chair. Okay. On the 8th, Yellow Ribbon Committee, 3:30. Legion. 19 breakfast. You got anything else?
Okay. Commissioner Blaine, before I go any further, I owe you an apology for picking on your leader and just calling me out. Just came out of my mouth looking at that.
Mr. Chair, you need not apologize, and I appreciate you keeping me sharp within the boardroom. And I appreciate your candor in running our board meeting. So thank you. Mr. Chair, I have two things to add to the calendar. Both are on Wednesday, May 10th at 10 a.m. From 10 a.m. to noon, the Executive Board of Region 5 Development Commission will meet and review budget personnel issues that morning from 10 till noon. And that afternoon, prior to our annual meeting with all of our 3 counties, the Morrison Todd Wadena Community Health Board will meet at 4 o'clock prior to the 4:30 all out get together, I'll just say.
Very good.
So 4 p.m. That Community Health Board will meet. Other than that, that's all I got for you.
They're gonna be there early to get the chairs taken care of and everybody's tables. Okay.
And I'll make sure they got barbecue chicken too.
Outstanding. Like hear that. Commissioner Casper.
Yeah, mostly covered by you folks, but on the 28th, I have a Mississippi Headwater Board on Friday. Then I'm jumping over to May 3rd, the Northern Reliability Project over at the Peters Ballroom in the afternoon. Then Thursday before, Council on Aging over in Sartell. And they let us come and be present personally. So I'll be going there. And then the only other one I have here is on the 11th is Mississippi Headwater Board once again on the 11th.
Okay. that everything from everyone?
Mr. Chair.
Yes?
I'll just say this, on the 5th of May, I had received notification of a MACA Region 6 meeting. So we've been moved to Region 6 now. I had
know that.
10 o'clock down and everything is tentative. So I will follow back up acknowledging that's the same time as the TSWAC meeting. So I may have to go to represent the county as it may conflict with the rest of the schedule, but more to follow on it. I'll follow up with MACA and AMC. And then on the 11th, just because they're a partner of ours, Morrison County Soil and Water Conservation District is going to reveal their new logo at 3 p.m. on the 11th. So it's exciting for them.
All right. That's all. I believe we are.
We'll recess, or we'll move into a closed session.
Okay, at this point, we'll move into a closed session.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can we take a 5?
Oh, no, we're going to.
Okay, thank you.
So time is 10:30. We'll move into our closed session, correct? Okay. And now we're gonna take a break.